All right. Well, again, I want to welcome everyone to session 3 here. This is session 3 of 4. We're going to have another meeting next Monday. If you've signed up for this series, you just register once, and that should get you into every one of these. So, really great to see some people come back and join us for session 3. A couple of fantastic speakers and presenters here, colleagues and friends of mine. Doug Widow and Wakiyan Peta are here to continue this conversation from these last couple of weeks that we've gathered. This is session 3 of engaging our relatives, our Native relatives, in the healing process during substance use disorder treatment and beyond. So that's I think important to note, because we've talked about this idea of continued healing extends far beyond just a treatment admission, even if that patient or that relative stays with you in a continuum of care that goes beyond just the primary care. My name is Steve Steiney. I'm one of the managers here at the National American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. I'm going to be hosting today and hopefully watching the chat box and watching for all of you to engage with us and ask questions, offer some comments. I come from a clinical background. Prior to coming on here, I've worked in a substance use disorder treatment center for 23 years, and so that's sort of what I bring, more of a Western based approach to addressing substance use disorders. Today we're really going to continue our conversation though on engaging those Native patients or those Native relatives or clients in the process of healing, and specifically in the context of addressing substance use disorder. So I'm just honored and really excited to be here with Doug and Wakiyan. They both bring an extensive knowledge and understanding, both culturally and clinically, to the table. So we're really fortunate to have both of them here with us this afternoon, because I know they're both very busy. So thank you guys for being here. Before we get started, just a couple of just quick information slides. As you know, this event, this series, is brought to you by the National American Indian Alaska Native HTC. We're made up of 10 regional centers, a National Hispanic and Latinx Center, as well as a ATTC network coordinating office at the University of Missouri. This project is supported and funded by SAMHSA, and the content is developed by the presenters. What we talk about today, ideas, opinions, views, do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the National American Indian Alaska Native HTC. We are going to make a recording of this event available. We do have an archive that has both the first 2 sessions, as this one will also be added to that archive. So if you have a friend or colleague that is not able to be here today, I can make that link available, and we'll make that link available to you in the follow-up email after today's event. You can also request 1.5 continuing education units that are NADAC approved. You can use those towards your credentialing, whatever state you are in. They are NADAC approved, so they should be accepted by most governing bodies for certification or licensure. Lastly, we're just going to ask, do you consider completing a short survey? I know many of you have participated in these, so you know they're very brief. They can't be linked to you in any way personally. We really value your feedback, so I'll put a link to that survey in the chat today. If you don't get a chance to get to it, we'll include that link in the follow-up email after today's event. We'd love to hear back from you. We added a couple of short answer questions to this survey, so we get to hear from you in your own words. So please consider filling that out at the end of today's event or when you hear from us post-event via email. I know we're gathered here virtually today, but before we get started, I wanted to take a few moments to acknowledge the land and pay respect to the Indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. Please take a moment to read through this land acknowledgement that was created by 3 former members of our team, Ella and Keely Driscoll and Mr. Sean Bear of the Meskwaki and Winnebago nations, respectively. Thank you. Without further ado, I want to introduce again our 2 speakers and presenters today. First, my colleague and friend, Mr. Doug Widow Jr. He is Cheyenne River Sioux. He was working in the field, providing outpatient services to relatives there in the Santee area. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Doug over the last year and a half and really appreciate the knowledge and the wisdom that he brings to the table. And we share as persons of long-term recovery, and I really have valued my friendship with him over the years. So welcome, Doug. So glad you're here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation we have going. And also, I want to introduce my colleague and friend, Mr. Wakiyan Peta. He also is Cheyenne River Sioux, and I haven't had as much time to spend with Wakiyan, but he and Doug know one another, and Wakiyan has decades of experience in the field, lots of lived experience, lots of clinical experience, and just a lot of knowledge related to substance use disorders, behavioral health, and the cultural implications connected to Indigenous people. So really happy to have you here as well, Wakiyan. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us. So thanks, guys, for being here. And as I said, I'm just going to be here just kind of helping monitor the chat box and offering any other thoughts or things that may be related to the topic today. So again, I want to thank both of you and, of course, our audience for taking the time out of your Monday afternoon to join us. So yes, we will. That's right. When we follow up with you via email, you can request those CEUs, and we'll get those out to you within. We try and get those out within about 7 to 10 business days. So, you guys, I'm going to get the next slide deck up. Doug, you want to introduce yourself a little bit more than I did, or either of you guys, just to let the audience know kind of how this series got started and kind of what our goals have been. I'll put this next slide deck up.
Hello, my relatives. Lakota Mikaki, huh? Papi, much. Come from Cheyenne River. My family comes from the Hollowhorn, Kills Alive, Lonely Call, Yellow Chill, In the Monks, Bill's Fire, Brown Thunder. I'm worked down here now in Santee for 12, going on 13 years. Lakota language is my first language. A storyteller. Been sun dancing for a long time. Been sober for a long time as well. But I carry the oral tradition or oral stories. So after I share a little bit here off of our agenda, I'll go into one of the storytelling. Um, Steve, did you find where we're supposed to be at?
Yeah, I got it. I'm just going to advance to that next slide, just to review last week, to see if anyone had any thoughts, or if you or Wakiyan had any thoughts that related to last week, things to keep in mind, or things that we maybe didn't get a chance to touch on.
One of the things that how this all got started is you know, we work with our people, and it's different. The reason why I say it's different is because when we um start doing an assessment or an intake, or just to see if they'll fit in the program, a lot of times we forget, and we'll tell them or we forget to tell them that hey, we gotta because of funding, we have to um put your information in the computer, uh, and let them know that by doing that, it's not more important than they are, because a lot of times our relatives are coming in, they're already hurting, uh, and by doing stuff like that, it can make them feel more or less than, and usually by the time they get to us, it's almost like court ordered, forced to be there. And so we got together and we said, hey, let's try to come up with something where it'll help other people that are out there, because whatever we're going through or whatever we've been through, um, I know others are going through it also. And not only that, but our main objective is to be able to support each other uh, as we go through uh, helping our people, and never forget that to love whom we serve, um, because after a while, if we get burnt out, or there's other names that the people come up with, compassion fatigue, all those things, and we kind of forget why we started doing this. And we're doing this because we love the people, and we're trying to make a difference in the community, in the reservation, or wherever we're at. So I'll leave at that. And if somebody wants to share, they can.
And thank you, Doug. Yeah, we can, if you have something that comes to mind during the course of our discussion today, you can put something in the chat or use the hand raise feature to let us know that you would like to join the conversation, or just go for it and unmute and jump right in there. Before we moved on to those objectives, I was hoping we kind of ran out of time last week. And I know, Wakiyan, you touched on this when you were speaking in your doing the blessing. But that last point, kind of the mainstream thinking versus native thinking, and you talked about you alluded to both ways trying to live in harmony. And I don't know if you wanted to talk on that at all, or touch on that before we move forward.
Oh, yeah, I was going through life and learning this profession, and then also staying home. We do have a community college, and I've been to other universities, but I spent I shared before that since being introduced to it, even in my in the womb when they talk prevention, that's where I had to use some guided imagery when I was first into recovery and I didn't know what I was dealing with. So the mainstream just basically told me I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, I have some mental health issues and a lot of other stuff. And when I came home, my relatives welcomed me because they heard that I wanted to change my life. So they started leading me towards our culture, whereas before it was the farthest thing from uh, from wanting to. I wasn't introduced to our culture. I was introduced part of our culture mainly from the addicts and the co-occurring the mental health happening and not much culture other than knew that as a tribal member, but a lot of names were thrown. And first they told me I was a Indian, and I didn't know later on that that's across the sea. The Indios are the Indians from India, I guess, and it got more derogatory as a dirty drunken Indian, and that's where I come from, and that's where I'm gonna end up. And this was in the mainstream. They shipped us off, a lot of our family got shipped off to different church schools without even getting a chance to say, no, I don't want to go, or into the boarding school system. So the mainstream thinking was that there's no value in being a Lakota. And then they threw the word Sioux at us, and it stuck in the government. And that was a derogatory name put upon us by one of the warring tribes that we were at war with. Different names now, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, all of those kind of names. So my grandfather said, you don't have to believe in that because it's because I was put on this. And they used to call us Native Americans, and further on through this, then my grandfather at 82 said, Ni Lakota Tchokake. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he was saying that first, before anything, I'm a Lakota. Then I started learning about the mainstream ways. So I was introduced to addiction and being trained in it. And at a young age, where my own family, because they were using and dealing, my older brothers and cousins, and also the like I said, when going into the mainstream and use religions, different types that were here, and it's kind of like just pick one and get baptized, and with no training or either about the creator of the good things. That was more twisting the word of Christ. And then after that, the addiction and becoming fully engulfed in it. And coming into where at a young age, my body gave out, my mind holistically, it's in my spirit left. My mind was pretty much near insanity, and body was broken down from the addiction, and emotionally, it was just numbness. So the mainstream thinking, that's where I started. And then everyone else was going off to school and military, and my family said, why don't you stay here at home? I was put to task by a few of my relatives around their deathbed, my sister being one. So we need some Lakota Wichasha. We have plenty of macho men and dysfunctional males in our community and our Tioshpa and everywhere. And so I began my journey into that. And it was very tough because my first form of thinking was of an addict, alcoholic, and all of that comes with that. And then the second was thinking like an American, so I could handle, and then learning to think, on my tashi that was helping me, my male cousins who had been already active said, you have to think and talk like a Lakota. I said, "Well, I don't even know what that means, Cushing." He said, "Well, you'll learn if you just keep at it." So, and that was, geez, 29, no, farther than that, I think 37 years ago when I started that journey at 22.
Hmm.
And I'm still here in my 29th year of sobriety and working for our tribe for the last 29 years. But in that transition period from 22 to 30, it was fighting my own self. No one else was with all the thinking process. Or basically, how I learned it was learned behavior, and that anybody could quit drinking and drugging, but it's the change I had to make in my life and thinking. And so that led into my profession, where in our area, you're still considered a cowboy and Indian state. At the legislative level, few of the directors from our region alcohol program got just our review process alone. It took them 11 years. When Obama got sworn in, they swore that bill into law, just recognize us as Lakota providers, and our review system was up to par. So it took 11 years of that to fight that belief system. And some of those were in those positions lobbying for the state against us and our people. So that double thinking standard, well, I already kind of knew that. And I'd come home and it'd say, "Oh, you're an apple." And I said, "Gee, I don't know what that means, but I was red on the outside and thought white on the inside," or something of that nature.
Hmm.
So I learned all these double standards, and even moving into the profession, that if you weren't certified, then you really didn't have no value of teaching. And so I would always fire back, "Well, we have fluent Lakota speakers and thinkers, and so how do we value that? Because I'm in the middle here, I feel torn from both ways." So that double standard still exists today, and I still deal with it, even with the new, like they say, for a total in the school system alone, from Head Start to 12th grade and then some college. So almost, geez, wow, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years of mainstream education in the American way. I'd learned. And so, again, that double thinking, that I always have to remember where I came from. So when I've recovered, I'll say, in a sense, from the addiction since I become stable. But sometimes, like with other ailments, and you hear people say, "Oh, my arthritis is acting up. Oh, my diabetes." And my thinking is sometimes, "Oh, my addiction's acting up because I'm thinking crazy. I'm not thinking professionally or as a professional or as a Lakota Wichasha, that I'm back to being a dysfunctional male." So some of those things that even within self, the double thinking standards. So I'll just kind of stop right there, because again, this could be a whole session in itself.
Yeah. Yep. Anyone thoughts, comments? Just encourage everyone to feel free to participate if you have thoughts. It's like maybe Rick, are you trying to share with us? I see you unmuted. Okay. Well, I just, Doug, I put up those objectives. I didn't know if you wanted to review those with the audience again, just to kind of give us an anchor point as we move forward into today's topics. These are just the objectives that Doug and Wakiyan and I thought about as we put the series together. Any one of these, Doug or Wakiyan, that you want to emphasize?
That third one.
Yes.
So like that, we have to wear two hats. But one of the things is, like I said before, to be able to acknowledge where they're at rather than where we want them to be. And today when you start talking culture or anything like that, you'll catch their attention. But if you start talking about anything that's not culture, you will lose their attention almost immediately. And so culture is prevention. And so it's kind of like what we talked about earlier, not just to put a teepee on the logo and say we're culturally culture program. And also like what we were talking about on the way home from Billings, me and my boy pulled over to help somebody that was on alongside the road. They couldn't get their tire down. They had a flat. So we pulled over and tried our best to help out, and three of us older ones, we didn't know how to pull that down. My little guy, he's 11 years old. He waited till we were about ready to give up. He's gonna call the police and say, "Hey, these guys need help," and continue on. And he says, "Dad, I think it goes the other way." Sure enough, it fit, and we lowered that tire down, jacked it up, and changed it. So that's, even though there were non-natives in today's world, hardly anybody stops anymore. Nobody helps each other out. Everybody's on their phone. It's lucky we didn't get, sideswiped from somebody being on their phone. So and today, that's the phone really takes a lot of that, you know, culture stuff away. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about the culture piece, um, is that a lot of times we want to get them to seek their mental health. We want them to uh talk about, some years back when we first put on the reservation, um the native people got together and asked the counselors to leave. And what because what was happening was they were taking them down to a secluded area where it was dark, um, and talk about bad things. Um, and so there was no sitting outside. Um, and if they're going to go just to talk about bad things, then a lot of our people didn't want to go, and so they told the counselors, to leave. So that culture piece, that language gives us life, gives you mind, spirit, and a way to understand everything around you. It teaches you how to behave, be wise, put your wise mind on, and know what's good, and know what's bad, to know the difference. The language has art and beauty. Um, and like we've been saying earlier, this is not for everyone. And you may get triggered. Um, but when you get triggered, it's time to make that choice to heal. A lot of times, as counselors, some of us have our own trauma, and we learn from an early age to run from it, not to take a look at it. So at this time, if you guys all want to join me, make sure your feet's flat on the floor and getting comfortable position. Take a deep breath. One more deep breath. Hunk, long ago, was these two boys playing, and one of them spooked his other horse, so he fell, took his life. So they found out that this boy that passed belonged to the chief. And so the chief told him to take him away. So he'll deal with it when the time is right. So a year passed. This boy painted his face, singing his death song, and the chief had him stop. And he grabbed that boy and told him to stand up. And he said, all of you know I had a son, but he's no longer here. He said, I still have all this love to give. Took a rag and he wiped that boy's face. And he told him, he said, from this day forward, I'm taking this boy as my son. And I want all of you to treat him as such. To three, come back. Cha, Lumpa, Yamne. Well, you can stop the flute music. Took his flute out again. So that story is about the uh, forgiveness throughout our life. There's 4 types of forgiveness that we have to take a look at, go through. One of them is somebody bumped into you going into the store, they'll say, excuse me, or sorry. Now, each one, it gets harder. The next one is, maybe you're grieving and one of your relatives or children say something to you, you forgive and keep going. And the last one is forgiving the unforgivable. Each one of us have one of those. If we don't take care of it, it's not the one that is that needs to be forgiven is gonna benefit from that, but it's ourselves that will benefit from that forgiveness. And so, before we go any further, just in your mind or in the chat box, place two here and now questions. What do you like to eat? What's your favorite color? Or what color clip-ons you like?
I'm getting hungry now.
First time I did that with Wakiyan, he said, my favorite color is crimson aloe vera. I don't even know what that color was. And there's a reason. There's a reason why we're doing this, because if some of you been there and saw the boy in your mind, in your image, a lot of us want to stay there because it's we kind of got away for a little bit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joaquin, or anybody has any questions or.
Moving on to this slide now, or?
I think so, Wakiyan. I'm just encouraging everyone in the chat, if you have a comment or
Oh yeah, that's what I was kind of waiting for, see if you.
anybody wants to jump in. But I put this next slide up. This is again one of our anchor slides. Really in talking with Doug and Wakiyan about this notion or this idea, this process of engagement, and we see this throughout, the work that we do with our relatives or our patients or clients, engaging with them. So these questions really are meant for you to think about, and to really ask yourself, how does this idea of engagement apply to the work that I do? And that's really where we're coming from, in this regard, whether we view this as a trauma-informed care, whether we view this as person-centered, whether we view this as a connection with this person through the use of culture. One of the questions that I had asked in the chat, and it came up, I think, before, Doug, was what if you have a relative, and this is for Wakiyan too, what if you have a relative that you're working with that doesn't know their culture, or doesn't have that experience yet? What is the strategy you might utilize to engage with them, if you were in a clinical setting or in an admission or an intake setting?
Well, we used to use an assessment tool, or the ASI as they call it. They had some cultural questions that was built for our area, and it's now called the Aberdeen, or it was called the Aberdeen area, and it's since been called the Great Plains. Well, way back when all the tribes in our 5-state region here, the Great Plains, and they, like the state of South Dakota, they used a system called STARS, and the tribes, they pick one called the Orion AccuCare assessments. And before we would the next generation that came in, as you say, way back when, then, now it's been a while since I started here, but they used to say even the older generation, which was more, lack of a better word, civilized in the American way, they said, why is this relevant of what you know about your culture? Well, some of those that were talking were on called a relocation program back in the 50s, where they wanted all the Native Americans to get moved to a city and start learning about the great melting pot of the American way, go to universities, work for the government at the Maryland level, IHS, BIA, all of it, even the law enforcement agencies. But a lot of them were, when they started giving out these little stipends, and noticed growing up, there were certain times like they would show up and they say, oh, I'm a tribal member, but I've never been here. My great grandparents in the 50s were, they say, were sent out to go learn about the American way and become part of the melting pot. And so now that generation is that they are coming home and they say, I know I'm a Native American, I know I'm a tribal member, but I don't know what that means. Because I've never had, other than Googling is what I hear lately. It's a lot of Google, calling home and trying to reconnect with relatives, but don't have the means, because that's, living in the city is expensive, and if they're on a fixed income, it's basically important is survival rather than living skills. And when they come home, a lot of the connection that they have with relatives is those that are actively using alcohol, drugs, or the lifestyle. And so some of them think, is this what this means? That this is our culture, this is who I am and where I'm headed? And it is a culture in itself of drinking and drugging in our environment at home. But the engagement process, when we did have that tool, I guess where I was leading to that same group, they called them the baby boomers. They were in charge of these things, directors, and they decided to pull that ASI apart and take the Native American component out of there. I wasn't at that level. I would have sure lobbied against it, but we were outvoted, and now we're trying to put it back in because it is relevant. Now these great grandchildren are in our language. They say "Akta Tchakoja." The great grandkids are coming and wanting to know what this means. There's not a lot, but there's far and few, and that's what I was always taught: is that this is going to come out on somebody, and they're going to come home, and we have to be ready. And it's hard to be ready when we weren't engulfed in that culture. It was more mainstream and addiction and just hard work. And that was about that's what a man was. So. And a woman was to be the caretaker and take the abuse from the man. And that's how, from all the places I was in mainstream and at home, was trying to find what did the culture mean. And when we started learning our own ways, a lot of us, and we started engulfing them in, well, would you like to go see the ceremony? You're welcome, we'll take you there. More or less like a field trip. Even in our own Lakota way, there was some that thought it was just a legend made up about the Desan Tachanupawi, the white buffalo calf pipe woman. Thought it was just a legend. When I took this group of youth there, they thought, oh, this is real. And we're from corner to corner, I'd say we're about 150 miles apart from some of these communities. And just taking them as a youth counselor from some in they say the West End, we took them all the way to the East End, and they didn't know places existed within our own homeland, or the other word, reservations. And then vice versa, I took the farming and then the ranching community and those that lived way out in the districts, and took them to the other side from the East, and they didn't know that our relatives on that end spoke their language fluently. They thought that was just something that they said as history. So trying to incorporate this piece back in and using lecture and just hands-on, as we're more versatile learners. I had to learn that early on in my career, where they said they're going to let you know how they're learning. And they'd say, oh, I see what you're saying. And I said, oh, I get it. They're visual learners. And, oh, I hear you. And they're more auditory. Oh, I feel you. More that feeling stuff. And so that's how the majority of the young people are now moved into, not a lot of them, but went into our adult programs. And so we had to indigenize because some wanted that lingo. And so that approach is what we really had to integrate. You know, I even went for the boards early way on for my certification. I'd use the concept called the Red Road approach. Gene Thinnock and Rick Thomas were here back in the 80s. I wasn't even thinking about sobriety, but early on. So they indigenize, or lack of a better word, we say, how do I Lakotaize this teaching to take it home? Because some are still being raised by grandparents who are their first language is Lakota, so their thinking process is in Lakota, but yet they want to be accepted by the mainstream, even here in town, that it's not cool to be a Lakota. It's better to be like you fit in. So in a sense, that's where it started. And some of these topics I'll just run through real quick. Cultural congruency rather than the cultural competency. When as I got to experience one of the first Wiwangwachi, the sun dances in our area in the middle 70s, I'll say. we as a people, when all other nationalities that were migrating to America got to practice their own belief, freedom of religion, but not our people as Native Americans. And I didn't know that. I said, how come they're only doing this since recently if this is the old ceremony? And I got a little schooled at 8 years old where they said, well, we don't have those rights. And now we do because of the Freedom of Religion Act in the 70s. I said, I did not know that, but I was only 8. So. But as I moved in this realm of here introducing culture, you know, after a while it became, how much Indian are you? How much Indian do you know? How much Lakota? So it's more about trying to out Indian each other on who you knew, dropping names of ceremony people, ceremonies. So rather than engage in it, it was just how much you knew, the competency, and to play it off. Like I could throw around a lot of clinical terms I really don't understand, but it makes me look like I know what I'm talking about. But in the new phase of cultural congruency, it's now, what do you know? What can you learn and utilize to at least plant the seed in those coming? It may not be in your lifetime or my lifetime, but at least the seed will be planted. And so the congruency of Zelia using smudge, going to a ceremony, using words in prayer, and then moving from there, like in our culture, a lot of young people are jumping right into it because that's what they're being told. Whether it's like learning to run before they even learned how to crawl yet. And so a lot of it's looked over in like this next point of abstinence is that just so you're doing it, you don't really have to be. And it's getting more and more accepted in certain circles that you can use alcohol and drugs and be really almost the concept of be absolved of your sin, the other in 4 days out of the 365, be absolved of your sin, go to Sundance, get pierced, have a good talk and dance hard. And some go right back to that lifestyle, drinking, drugging, abusing their partners and banning their children. I can only speak from experience. That's where I came from because I really didn't know this stuff. And it was okay to be high and drunk, and that was like an after thing. And so I see now that when I was put to the task is that abstinence, but I didn't know about the detox period of all of these, because where I work now, we're seeing now the data driven, as they say, 3 years off of meth, a great chance of not going back to it, and living with either psychotropics or other medication of what was broken. It can be repaired, but living with not surviving, but living now in recovery and accepting that. And with the opiate users, pretty close right behind them, 1.5 years. Alcohol, a good year of being clean, but also using therapy and the cultural practices. It has to go hand in hand, like with any therapeutic value. And as they come in, that's all they say is, I'm broken. I've had some young people, and as a youth counselor, I say is, they use a lot of swear words where it was really frowned upon. Well, why are you letting them swear in your groups? I said, well, this is their street lingo, and this is the only way we'll work on that when we get there. So I accepted them and allowed them. When I was talking this concept about that's just something you're doing and it's not who you are. One young man said, well, Kina, you're telling me I'm not effed up. I'm just effing up with my legal problems and my addiction. I said, yeah, you got it. You're not effed up. It's just something you were doing. And now we're going to work on it, and we're going to work on changing that word from a proper English word into a proper Lakota word. And wherever they fit for you, you'll use the lingo as bilingual, and some even trilingual because their backgrounds in or their other part of the family, if they're interracially married, someone would rather be known as Spiola or a Hispanic than be belittled when they come home. They don't know their culture. But they say, yeah, but when I go out there, I'm belittled by my Hispanic community because they say, well, you're an Indian. Why aren't you being with them? So, and in other sense, we have other nationalities. So just coming and meeting them, as it's stated here, that not we had a grant a while where that said meet them where they're at, and yes, we may know they need some deep um, trauma counseling, abuse issues, and all of that. And they said, well, we know we need to get them there, but how do we get them there? We got to work with them. So just work with. And now the new movement of harm reduction is really frowned upon, and like the other one that says it must be 100% dry. So, and so it's kind of a up and down thing that we go around in our staff here and in the community, that different meanings from different generations, I'll say. So that in a nutshell, that I'll share that much and let someone else or Doug.
Oh, that was awesome. Remember when Steve first came here, he says, walks in the door, he says, what you got? I said, Steve, it's what do you have? um, yeah, when that going back to that question, you know, teaching and culture, before COVID hit, we was up in Minnesota, up in a place called near Duluth. They have their own cultural. You can get license or credentials to the state of Nebraska through them. Anyway, what they require up there is that not only to be licensed or certified, but to be able to speak their language and to be able to um, pour water, um, you know, and I was listening to that and hearing that, you know, that was awesome. You know, that here's a program that was willing to do that. Um, I'm not too sure. I think they still have it. But they would encourage the culture. So there's different language instructors. You can take classes. But a lot of it's real simple. I mean, I grew up with it, so I didn't think anything. Uh, anyway, an example is even the food. The food that we eat, you know, growing up eating, you know, whatever's on at home, you know, rabbits, um, porcupine, squirrel, taxa, the deer, um, and not only that, but you know, to uh, I never thought it was anything, you know, much, but eating that kidneys, with a little salt in there, not cooked, eat it like that. Um, and that's how our people live to be, you know, 100+ years. And it is also not only that food is, and a big example is when we grow food at home, it's not to gain money, you know. We're out there to talk to that plant, you know, and versus today, you know, you can't even go buy corn. You gotta go, you know, you have to buy it. Um, and if you ever notice on those corn, there's only like 3 or 4 growing on that one stalk. Um, so, you know, as Steve was saying, you know, it's all about helping each other. Uh, that's where the you know that culture piece comes in. So if you know, when we helped that lady along the road, you know, she was trying to uh pay us for helping. Um, I didn't take it, but my little guy did because he he he's the one that figured it out. So but anyway, like that, when you help somebody, you know, you'll shake hands. And because of COVID, you know, you didn't want to shake hands, it's fist bump and shoulder bump or whatever. But a long time ago, it was all about that connection. So if you help somebody and wanted payment back for whatever equal that value, you would shake hands with your right hand. But if you didn't want anything in return, you know, you used your left hand. And, and that's telling that person, no, I don't want anything in return. Um, so those are just a few. But the main thing is to help each other, uh, and love each other. But today, you know, in today's world, you know, as Wakiyan was talking about that, uh, where they sent people to, you know, these big cities, and my aunt went, and she spoke the language, and but there was a part of her that was missing. She missed her family, and as you're growing, you know, no matter who it is, again we would come to that. You know, in the Western term, they would use codependency. You know, to become codependent with our children. You know, do we continue to take care of them? You know, even after 18, of course we do. But you know, at the same time, if they're continue to use or cause problems, then that's where you know, we have to have that boundary. Even the medicine people along, you know, some time ago, I was watching this one, and you know, he asked, you know, it was getting evening, to, he said, "Who cool we on today?" He said, "Let's go fishing." So we did, and it was getting dark, so I was heading home, and he said, it's almost like he knew. We, we stopped on a hill, and sure enough, there was a car coming. Didn't come all the way down, it stopped. Somebody walked over to his place, and they probably stood there 5, 10 minutes. Then they went back up. Then they left. In the language, he said, "Una hot I'm getting tired of this, you know." He said, "These people can get these things on their own." So I kind of knew what he was talking about. So instead of saying no or putting a limit on it, you know, he came, he was home through that prayer. And so in today's world, you know, as being as counselors, helpers, you know, there's something always going on. tragedy somewhere, somebody passing away. And so we always out there helping, but we also have to take care of ourselves. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, then you know, um, in their language, they said, you're the ones that can be thinking yourself, even being sober. Because nobody's not coming to say, oh, hey, glad you're sober today. You're not gonna get that. So you kind of have to give that to yourself. Pat yourself on the back, hug yourself. Be good to yourself. Because otherwise, who's gonna do that for you? And the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about with the culture piece. Today they try to teach the language from the left side of your brain. So somebody has their hand up.
Hi, yeah, Steve was asking me to just mention this because I posted a couple things. One I posted was, as you were speaking about, I think culture and, having some culture congruency, but we have to know who we really are is what I posted. And I think that, having I'm don't know if I'm going to say this right, but being culturally congruent will help us know who we really are. And then my other post was that people will remember that you believe in them.
Growing up, my dad was a minister, and my mother was a long-time cook, and she held Sunday school, and both of them spoke the language. But they also went to boarding school too, and so that's where a lot of the misunderstanding stuff like that come from. And so and being sober myself, I had to figure out, do I continue going AA? Do I go to church? And so I started finding my own way, and in the language they call it Zuyaya. You have to go I left the reservation for 6 years, found myself, came back, and started learning and finding who I am. And so, I could have been somebody that, my parents wanted me to be, or do I find out who I want to be? And no matter which road I took, finding out, as my grandma would say, you know, you would go through life, figuring out these things. And so there's a term that they use called watoglake, and that's how you received a name, and it's based on my grandmother's grandpa. His name was Yellow Shoe, And when he went into battle, horseback, wore the word on it. And so all the actions from what he did, that's how we all got our names. And anyway, today they'll look up, they want to be, they see a bird or something, or I think Steve, he wanted to be a dreamkeeper or a dreamweaver he wanted to be his name. But today, that's how it is. So they try to teach the left side of the brain into the culture piece, and it doesn't fit. And so if we're going to be on that culture piece, we have to twist that. Is somebody asking something there, Steve?
Yes, Kursa said something as you were talking, and it's sort of related to what Jeanette had said. She said, or Jeanette had said something about knowing who you are, and then Kursa said, find your roots so that you can stay grounded.
All right. I'll share this part and then I'll leave it. I want to share that part about how the horse came, but I'll wait. It's kind of long. But Unshiriki cha oki cha umpo, have compassion for each other and love each other. Our ancestors valued service and viewed it as an obligation and duty. Service begins by making people welcome, wanted, and accepted, and appreciated of our heritage. Remind us to serve each other. And in the Inipi, when we see each other, a long time ago, how and language changes. And a long time ago, when you saw two grandmas, see each other, and what they would do is they would say, and they'll say their name, and they'll probably couldn't run, or they'll hurry up and get to each other, and then they'll hug each other, and then after that, they would cry, and because they were, it wasn't crying of sadness, they were crying of joy of seeing each other still on this earth, and valuing that in one another. Today we don't hardly ever seen anybody do that, especially the men, and anyway, when those grandmas did that back in that day before it got changed, that was it was called Wocheke, because they cried, they embraced, hugged each other. But today it changed to Wocheke, means prayer. So But yeah, everything kind of changed, and um, that question I have is, do we believe our ancestors served one another, and should we serve each other like our ancestors did? Somebody have a question there, Steve?
Yeah, Rick had posted something in the chat. He had asked. He was curious to hear a little bit more about someone, you know, being named versus choosing their name, and then he also wanted you to circle back to the left brain, right brain discussion that you had mentioned earlier. If we have a few minutes.
Okay, there's different types to give a name. That first one is what I talked about, Wotaglake. It's they named you from, as you were coming down, they were carrying the culture, the language, and so they would name you like that from the grandpa, somebody honorable, and just I'll try to hurry up, but an example is my grandma. She named each of us based on her husband. And like for my nickname or my name to with her was we Asluhan, and what that meant was long time ago. See, all these have stories. Long time ago, our women, the girls were always watched, and the only time they weren't watched is when they went to go get water. So grandma went to go get water, and grandpa snuck up on her and was watching her. So grandpa died. She was in mourning, but she named us, each one of us, and all the males of our family was named after what he did, and that's what that word means. And what was happening was, that's very smart. Why? It's because she kept grandpa alive through each one of us. And today that, nobody does that. And so there's a lot of dementia and all that stuff going on. But a long time ago, that was, that dementia was unheard of. And the other way, those other way of getting a name is, you can go to a medicine man, spiritual leader, their spirits can name you. Or you can take a name from somebody in the family. Like two of um, my older daughters, they're carrying my grandma's name, and so there's that way too. And what was the other question?
Just about the left brain, right brain reference.
Oh, okay. Um, an example would be like if you got to a ceremony and you saw or somebody saw, the sun dance going on, and somebody will make a comment, oh, they're not doing that right or correctly. But in reality, maybe that one that's conducting that ceremony, maybe he saw a certain way or the way he's supposed to do it. So not each one is the same, but we'll use that left brain to make that judgment of, okay, this is the way I saw it, and they're doing it different, so it's wrong. That's another perfect example of that. Another way is in a language. If you today they're trying to teach the language by reading and writing it, which is okay. But if you don't use it, you will lose it. So if you don't brand it in your heart, like so, if you learned it from your right side of the brain, or another way of understanding that is, if you went up to go fast, and a lot of people do that, they won't explain to them how to turn this left side off. If you don't turn this left side off, it's going to continue talking to you. It's going to say, why am I up here? I could be home where it's nice, air conditioner, and talk yourself out of it. So you need to turn this side off and open this side to, not try to make sense of things, but to accept, what's there, and to be able to take a look at those traumas and make a relative with it on this side. And so by learning that language from the left to the right, it's good, but if you don't learn it from this side, it's not going to stick. So one of the connections that Wakiyan and I have is he'll sing a song, and in that song, he's speaking that language. And so, if you really understand what that song means, it'll make you cry. Or if we're talking in a language about a grief, and we know what that grief is all about, so we'll feel it if somebody's sharing, but not taking it on, but feeling that, because each one of us went through grief, but we're really good at hiding it. Hope that I did my best to try to explain that.
Yeah, I was looking for a switch behind my left ear, so Doug said I could just turn it off. I just turn off that left side. I know we're nearing the bottom of the hour. I wanted to open the floor up for discussion. I know Julie made a comment about, and you had referenced this earlier, Doug, about foods. But she said that she wished she had knew and instilled in her kids about her people's food, current issues in their own intestinal health, or what they carry as generational trauma.
Oh, you was asking me? I was trying to read that.
Yeah, I was trying to read it out loud so you didn't have to try and find it on the chat there.
Oh, well, read it again.
Oh yeah, she just was talking about foods, and she said it's something she wished she had known to instill in her kids about our people's food. Current issues in their gut health are what they carry as generational trauma.
Oh, okay. Well, it's never too late to because it takes a process to get where we are. And we're guilty of it. As we were traveling, we saw McDonald's, we pulled in there. But to try to, like we're here pretty soon here, I'm gonna start hanging dry meat, and you know, uh put a sackcloth over it so the flies won't get on it. Um and start getting ready, like that, and the squash and the turnips, um, and making that soup. And man, that's my kids grew up that way. So my kids, when they see a deer, they'll identify with that. There's some, you know, papa soup, and but also to really take a look at, all those animals, including the fish, they all grieve too, because, driving down the road, somebody ran into a deer, that mom is probably grieving, or that family is grieving, you know, So a long time ago, we didn't think, we're at the top of the food chain or whatever, but we were all equal. We're all the same. As a matter of fact, the buffalo, they followed the stars, and so we didn't just, you know, they didn't wander on aimlessly around the earth. So they were following the stars, and we followed them, and that's how we learned is from them. And that's how, by helping each other, caring for each other, those are all come from them. So, and today, it's living that different world, it's, you live in the city, you will never know who lives next door to you. Well, on the res, everybody knows each other. So, it was, as being native, our culture, today it's reversed back at home. In those border towns, you see all these ranchers. If one is branding, they'll feed each other, and what they'll do is they'll all come and help that one person. That next weekend, they're over at so and so's house. They're helping each other. Where did they learn that from? They learned that from the natives, and we forgot our own way of life, and so by helping each other and caring for each other, that's the key, especially in the treatment, because they're gonna come, and if we're looking at them as a number, then they're gonna know it. All right, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I was just going to say, I've shared this before, but when I was able to go down and visit with Doug last fall, and had a chance to drink some water with him and in the Inipi, and I was very taken aback when several of his patients came and sweat with us, and he said those are the ones that are staying on the path. And so there's real power in culture and recovery, and that's evidence of it to me. So we're going to really appreciate everybody staying on with us. I know everyone's very busy, and we appreciate everybody coming on. We're gonna do another session, the final session, next Monday, the same time. We'll continue this conversation. We've got 4 other kind of topic or points to review, and I want to thank everyone for staying on. I really want to thank Wakiyan and Doug for coming on and sharing some of their knowledge and experience and wisdom with us. It's connected to this idea of how important it is that we engage with those that we work with, and try and help them. And I've found that sometimes I get just as much help by doing this, and it can be part of my healing as well. So please join us again next week. If you've registered for this event, you're already signed up. So if you can put it on your calendar and try and drop in and join us, we'd love to see you. I did post a link to the short survey in the chat area. If you don't get a chance to fill that out today, that's fine. We'll reach out to you via email and encourage you to try then. Appreciate the comments and the engagement. I appreciate you, Wakiyan. I appreciate you, Doug. You guys, we'll do this again, continue this conversation, this important conversation that we need to continue to have, and really appreciate everybody staying on. Until next time, let's everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay connected. Dokcha ake wachian ya ka tailo. I'm close. I'm working on this one. Trying to add that last part, Wakiyan.
Yeah. Doksha ake wa chiankaptelo.
Cheyenne River. I'm
We'll
getting
see
it
you again in the future, somewhere, somehow.
somehow.
All
Take care,
right.
everybody. Love you guys.
Doksha.
Doksha, okay.